First responders, thank you for all that you do. I'm Garrett Martin of the Alberta First Responder Mortgage Program, a program I put together myself. After spending 8.5 years in law enforcement, I got my mortgage broker's license, and now I'm a proud sponsor of the Alberta First Responder Association and doing mortgages for first responders. No matter where you are in Canada, reach out. We're talking exclusive rate discounts, cashback offers, and guidance from someone who's been in your boots. I know the demands of the job, and I know how to make homeownership easier. Whether you're buying, renewing, or refinancing, I'll compare top lenders from across Canada to save you money. So visit garrettmartinmortgages.com or text me at 403-915-1025 and let's get to work for you. Thank you for your service.
Sirens, Slammers, and Service, a podcast for female first responders by female first responders. My name is Nikki Cluche, and I will be your host. As a former correctional officer in Alberta for almost 2 decades and the founder of Blue Line Fitness Testing, which provides law enforcement fitness testing and first responder wellness workshops, I started this podcast as a way for female first responders to share the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of their daily work. I want to showcase the unique perspectives, skill sets, and personalities that women bring to a first responder career and share their stories. So get ready to laugh your ass off, learn a whole bunch, and be inspired by some pretty badass women. Let's go. Welcome back, guys. It's been a hot fucking minute, but we are back. It is season 9. I cannot believe it's season 9, you guys. I'm so freaking excited about this season. I have some absolutely stellar guests lined up, and we are kicking off season 9 all the way from the Midwest, US of A, with Alexandra Jabr. Alexandra has 20 years in EMS. She started her career in 2003. She has a PhD in depth psychology. She's also the owner of Emergency Resilience, which provides continuing education courses for first responders. Alex did most of her career down in Southern California and has now taken off in business, and we're going to get right into it because her specialty is death notifications. So welcome, Alex. How are you today?
Hi, good. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
I'm good. I'm so happy to have you. Again, we had to coordinate some schedules and figure out our time changes. And because you and I can't figure out that Central Standard Time, I cannot. It's like, I don't know what it is about Central Standard Time. I'm like 2 hours, 1 hour. I don't know. Is it? I don't know. Meh. So, but we got to figure it out. And now we're here and we're going to dive deep into this. So I want you to tell our listeners, kicking off season 9, 20 years in EMS, now a business owner, a fellow female entrepreneur. Yes, woot, woot, love us all. But tell me, how did this all start for you? How did you get into your career? What drew you to the first responder world?
Well, to be quite honest, I was a very nosy child. Honestly, anytime I saw an ambulance, I wanted to see what was going on. I did not come from a family of first responders or any healthcare professionals whatsoever. And somewhere along the lines, I forgot about that curiosity and that drive. And it was really random. My last week of my high school year, my senior year, somebody was like, "Oh, you should become an EMT." And I was like, "What is that?" I didn't know what it was. I knew what a paramedic was, but I didn't know what an EMT was. And they're like, "Yeah, they're the ones that drive the ambulance and assist with the paramedic. And they get, basic life support training." And my first response was, women do that? Women can do that? Because I'd never seen anybody. They existed at this point. This was like 2003. But that was my first response. And he goes, "Yeah, they do. Like, go do it." And that was it. Like, I just decided I'm going to go become an EMT. And I did. And I became certified, jumped right into it. And I did that for several years before I went back to paramedic school, worked as a medic for several years. And then my back. It was, classic L4, L5, S1. My S1 herniated 23 millimeters, had a career ending, life altering back injury, had surgery eventually, was able to get back to functioning. It took a couple of years to get cleared back for full duty. But by then my career had kind of taken a different turn. I'd gone into administration, working as EMS coordinator and educator. I've been educating for a few years by that point, but I was working in more of an administrative role. And then I kind of got a wild hair to start my own company and do my own continuing education because I kind of got bored with, your bread and butter stuff, which is still important, but there were all these other things, including death notifications that I felt like were just being pushed onto the margins, of things. And so that's why I say leaning into these marginalized topics and stuff that we don't really want to touch, but, I find. So my curiosity is still driving my career, to be honest with you. So I do courses on things that I find very interesting. And one of them was death implications.
That is amazing. I love that it's curiosity that's driving you and it still continues to do it because I think we do. The older we get, the less curious we get, the less we become, or I guess maybe the curiosity is still there, but there's not the like balls behind it to go and dive into it, right? We kind of go like, it'd be kind of cool to learn about that, but like, I'm not really going to do it. But like, if you can actually lean into that and you can continue to follow that curiosity and let it guide you down a path that you might not have gone down, you might be surprised at what you'd find at the end. So I think that's totally amazing. I just wanted, just so our listeners, because again, obviously podcasts coming out of Canada, so our process is slightly different. So EMT, you're doing like what for school? Is it like specific to the employer, like you have to do their training, or is there like an overarching like EMT program that you would take? And then when you moved into the paramedic role, what did that education look like?
So yeah, we have EMT programs you can go through that are as short as 4 weeks, which is kind of scary, to usually 16 weeks, 8 to 16 weeks. It just depends. Mine was on the shorter side. And then, yes, you go through, you get basically you have to get nationally accredited. So you go through your EMT program. I was before the national, so I didn't have to take national registry for my EMT. You get your license, you go through the state, county, and then you get hired by an employer and you go through their own training. So I did all that. Same thing happened when I went through paramedic school, but paramedic school is closer to a year, which I know is crazy because everywhere else in the world, it takes 2 to 4 to 6 and 8 years. And, Americans would never do that. And so they think we're in line when I say, no, other places, paramedicine's like a 4-year degree. And in, United States, it's a technical, certificate. And so you go through the same thing. You have to do national registry, you have to get licensed by the state, then the county, and then you get employed and you go through that training as well.
And so do you have to have a certain amount of time as an EMT before you're eligible to go for a paramedic? Or are you able to do like EMT, you finish that program, and then you dive right into medic school?
Typically, people do about 2 years of EMT before they go through paramedic school. And that was a requirement, pretty standard in most of California where I was from. But with the need for more paramedics, I don't know if that standard's changed, to be honest with you. I'm not saying it's recommended, but I remember even back then hearing about some parts of the country where you could go straight from EMT to paramedic and people would be like, oh my God, how are you doing that? And, it's not recommended, but it does happen in some places.
Yeah, we have a kind of a half and half here in Alberta as well. One of my really good friends is so we call it an advanced care paramedic versus a primary care paramedic. So primary care would be an EMT, advanced care would be like a paramedic. And she said, I can't remember what she called them on the show, but there's a specific name for them, but people that go primary care, finish their schooling straight into advanced care, but they've never actually been on the ambulance. They've never actually gone to a real call. All they've done is their book learning, and then they get out and they have this advanced care knowledge, but they don't know what the fuck they're doing. So she's like, so if you're when she was a primary care, but she'd been in primary care for like 10 years, she's like, that's not how we do that actually to the advanced care. And she's like, you got to kind of tiptoe because technically they're higher ranked than you are. But she's like, but they don't know what the fuck they're doing. So you're trying to save them and the patient at the same time. And I was like, okay, yeah.
There's so much to learn from experience that's not taught in the classroom that I think creates a big disadvantage if you don't have at least some exposure to 911 before you go into paramedic school. Yeah, that's definitely the case here.
And so out of Southern California, were you at a specific hall? Like that was your like home base and you always worked out of there? Or was it that you kind of like bounced around to different halls?
So we had a station. There were times that I worked out of a station on a 24-hour shift, but most of the time they call them system cars where you just bounced around from street corner to street corner for 12 hours or however long it took for you to get off work that day.
And so you're just mobile, like just patrolling and watching for emergencies. Oh, okay. That's interesting.
Well, we weren't like patrolling for emergencies, but like let's say there's 10 units distributed throughout the region that you're covering. So we were actually in San Bernardino County, which is the largest county in the United States. And we had 3 different divisions within it. And so within one of those divisions, you'd have like, let's say 16 ambulances. And if 4, popped off over here, they would redistribute them and move them to different post assignments so that we were more evenly distributed.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. And so you said kind of moving through that career, obviously like learning a shit ton on the job, like call by call by call, continuous learning, because you never get the same thing twice, and you never get, like you said, the textbook, oh, this is presenting as this, so therefore it must be this. You're like, oh, it's presenting as this, but it's totally not that. It's totally something different. And then your back injury. So can you, was it an on the job injury? And again, I'm not, if you don't want to talk about, we don't have to pry, but was it on the job or what happened?
It was work related. So I actually hurt my back years before it fully exacerbated. I remember exactly when it happened. I was transferring a patient from our gurney onto the hospital bed, and I just tweaked it. It was just, it felt like a muscle strain. And I thought to myself, you know what, I could probably come back to work, no problem, but I should probably call off tomorrow. And so after my shift ended, I went into my supervisor's office. I said, hey, I want to write this up. I want to document it because I'm going to call off tomorrow. And the next day was a holiday. And at that time, you got written up. You had an immediate write-up if you called off on a holiday. And I just wanted documentation to show, hey, I need to call off, but I don't want the write-up, but I don't need to go start the workers' comp process. I just need to rest my back. And he's like, okay, no problem. So that kind of sheltered me from the write-up. Mm-hmm. But what's interesting is I had hurt my back leading up to that. And I heard it times after that I didn't document it because I thought, it's nothing. Oh, it's whatever. It's so stupid. Like, I wish someone had told me, like, document every single injury. Like, just do it. You never know when you're going to need it, because that documentation, that piece of documentation from, 4 years prior to it actually debilitating me, was the reason why it got covered by my company, and it was paid for by my company. Otherwise, I would have been SOL.
Yeah. Because I used to be a manager, and that's exactly the same thing. I would be like, I know you don't want to, because I know you don't want to be the whiny person in quotation marks that's like milking the injury, but like, you never know when this is going to come back and you're going to need it. Like, I had one of my very good friends got into an altercation with an inmate and hurt her thumb, like totally bent it backwards, kind of felt weird. She was restraining somebody. The next day, she couldn't even hold a glass of water. She was like, what the frick is wrong? Turns out she had broken some little bone in her like hand that never heals. It will always remain broken. You will always have limited grip strength. That was it. That was her career-ending injury. And she wasn't going to write it up. She was just like, oh, I just kind of bent backwards while I was grabbing for her. But again, same thing. If she hadn't written it up, if she hadn't documented it, that would have been it. And she wouldn't have gotten any WCB coverage, any duty to accommodate to help her navigate the rest of it until she had eventually transitioned out of corrections. But yeah, it's a huge piece of advice. Like, even if you think it's stupid, document it, because as we always do in everything else that we do, CYA, baby, CYA. Why would we CYA on a patient call or on a physical altercation and not take care of ourselves and write that stuff up too? So yeah, I love that. And so then when you had like your actual like full out, I cannot believe your disc was herniated, 23 centimeters. Is that what you said?
23 millimeters.
Millimeters. Yeah. I was thinking centimeters. Holy shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy though. Like, that's insane. And so was that from transferring a patient again? Is that kind of how that?
So it was one of those things. So I actually went to the doctor because my leg, like, I just called it out. I was like, I can't feel my leg. I can't walk on it. Something's wrong with it. And he immediately got me in, which was fantastic, because at the time it was going to take about 6 weeks to see my physician. But as soon as I said, I can't feel my leg, they're like, oh, we've got a spot for you tomorrow. Got me in, immediately ordered an MRI, expedited the results, called me and said, you need to go to your employer. This is a very old compounded injury. Because I had told him I was just walking. I was walking and I couldn't, and I barely made it home. I'm in so much pain. Most of the pain was radiating down my left leg, down to my toes. I didn't know what sciatica pain was at this point. Believe it or not, I'd been in the field for over 15 years, almost 15 years at that point, and I hadn't had sciatica pain. So I was one of the lucky ones, and all of a sudden I had like 10 on a 10. Could not walk, could not sit, could not stand. There was no position of comfort whatsoever, and no amount of meds would touch it. So he saw this and goes, have you ever hurt yourself at work? And I was like, well, yeah, plenty of times. So he goes, you need to go back to your employer. Like, this is going to be a workers' comp case, and I need you to, he advised me well, because I wasn't thinking work related at that point. I was at the time. And then I racked my brain. I was like, well, yeah, I've hurt myself several times at work. But then I thought, oh, I only documented it that one time. So it was really my physician that tipped me off to going and pulling that. And my supervisor was excellent. My supervisor really had my back throughout the whole process. Even when workers' comp they're pieces of shit to me. They were absolutely horrific. When I tell you, I have never been just demoralized, dehumanized more than anything in my life. I couldn't believe these were healthcare workers. I did not relate to them in one way. I could not. They were horrific to me. And luckily, and so they actually didn't believe me. They said, oh, 20, like they saw the 2.3, what is it, centimeters, and they millimeters. So they were like, oh, 0.3, not a big deal. Everybody has that. And they were like, spinal stenosis, which I didn't know what that was at the time. That was the disc crowding the canal that my nerve went through, that the sciatica nerve went through. And he's like, spinal stenosis? Yeah, my mom has that. She got that watching Wheel of Fortune all day. Yeah, you're going back to work. I'm not taking you off. And then he like reluctantly was like, well, I'll put in an ortho consult, but when they see my notes, they're going to deny it. Like flat out face, like put me back on an ambulance. I go back into my supervisor's office just crying. And I'm not somebody that anybody saw cry very often. He goes, I am not putting you on an ambulance. And so by that point, I just had to sit around and wait and hope that the ortho consult would pick up my case. And they did. And that guy was a gem. He was not very well known for his bedside manner. He had a lot of complaints, but I think that was just par for the course for surgeons. Mm-hmm. The first thing he did was, he looks at my chart, he looks at my MRI, he's looking at the imaging, and he's like, well, I can see why you're in so much pain. And that was like, I went in guarded. Mm-hmm. It was my first like disarming moment. I went, yeah, why? How do you know? Because nobody believed me. I felt like nobody. And even the people who did believe me, I didn't think they could really understand because you couldn't see my pain. Yeah. He's suffering. And he said, well, he goes, this is the largest herniation I've ever seen in my career. And I'm just baffled because obviously I even overlooked the 2.3. I was thinking it was millimeters as well. I didn't catch it. Mm-hmm. And he teased me. He's like, I thought you were a teacher. And I was like, I don't know, so now
that's not my strong suit.
And I was like, now he's razzing me. I was like, I know med math. I don't know other, yeah. Never had to be a specialist in math. So anyways, or metrics or anything. And so then he says something along the lines. I tell him, I was like, well, he asked me, he goes, why do you look like, why do you not look so dumbfounded? And I said, well, I saw this physician's assistant told me blah, blah. And he goes, well, that's why he's a PA for comp and that's why he's a fucking PA and I'm a surgeon. And I was just like, oh, and he just immediately just earned my trust immediately after that. And so that was the start of me getting better, but it's been a process. It's been a very long process.
Yeah. And so during the time you were off, you said you kind of took the time, got surgery, got healed up a little bit, but you were also doing administrative stuff. And so was that when you decided to go to school, or did you carry on like in the EMS world until it was like, you know what, this ain't my jam anymore, I'm going to go back to school?
I was finishing my bachelor's when I got injured. My bachelor's was in emergency management and I didn't really like it. But once I injured my back, I thought, okay, I better start thinking about what else I want to do. Mm-hmm. Because I wanted to stay involved in EMS. I wanted to be EMS adjacent, but I didn't necessarily want to do emergency management. And I was okay not staying, I was an adjunct professor at that point working with paramedic students and I loved that, but I didn't see myself doing that for the rest of my life. And so that's when I kind of shifted gears and went into mental health. So my master's is in mental health with an emphasis in grief and bereavement. And my focus was death notifications and first responders. So I had already been teaching death notifications by that point, but I got to really focus in on that research and, really make it legitimate by going to graduate school and building my curriculum based off of everything that I learned in research there.
That is very interesting. And so what was your take on, like, again, I find it fascinating, death and bereavement, like that whole, again, the psychology behind it, how people process grief differently, how people process death differently, beliefs on death. Like, I have a very good friend. Her dad passed away just in the fall, and we've been kind of working through it together. He was her best friend. He was her confidant. He was basically everything to her. And, like the different stages, denial and anger and bargaining and all that stuff. And just how, we had a big conversation, what happens when you die? What's your belief? What do you think? What do you think? And it's like, oh, well, this and this. And, oh, well, do you believe this? Well, I don't know. So then to be able to do a deep dive into the actual psychology behind it, I think would be super fascinating. And so what did you find during your studies? What was like, was there a light bulb moment of like, oh my gosh, or was it just like an evolving of the knowledge you kind of had already been going with?
More so the latter. It was an evolving, it was kind of this evolution of what I already suspected and knew, but now I had some research to back it up. There's very little research specifically done for first responders. So in the pre-hospital setting, there is a little bit more done in hospital, ICU, PICU, and all that with pediatrics. So a lot of it had to be adopted. So as things go with, pre-hospital, is that a lot of times education and training is built for in-hospital staff, and then we have to kind of adopt it and, take what fits for us. Even like BLS and ACLS, it's always hospital scenes. It's not pre-hospital scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to adapt it to our setting. And so that was why I was very intentional with the course that I built, the continuing education course I built. I built it with the first responder in mind, with the person showing up on the ambulance, the fire engine. And I've also had law enforcement take it as well and find it to be very useful because they say, I've even asked them, I've said, was there anything missing or something you would have wanted differently for your work setting? And they said no, because it gave them, the consistent feedback I've gotten is it gave them insights as to why the paramedic does what they do,
Mm-hmm.
why they on scene and wait 20 minutes to work them. Like they were like, I sometimes wondered why they weren't getting going. And that's not the time to, do a Q&A with a neighboring agency. It's been eye-opening for them as well. So I was very specific that this was going to be something that if hospital workers wanted to take it, it's totally cool, but you're going to adopt it too. You'll be the opposite. This is built for first responders, and then you can take what fits and apply it to in-hospital work.
I love that because it is true. Like even when you do your like first aid research, it's like, oh yeah, like automatically here's your magical rubber gloves and your pocket mask that you have just with you ready to go as you're walking down the street. No, you fucking don't. Who has rubber gloves and pocket masks? Nobody, unless they're a fucking medic or a doctor. And even then they don't have it. Right. So it's like, yes, we can say like, we're coming in, we're checking for hazards. Look at us. We already have our gloves on. We've got our pocket mask ready. Like, no, we're coming hoofing down the hall from having rammed food in our face and we're coming from lunch and this was the code. And then you're coming in and there's blood everywhere and Buddy's head has been kicked in or it's a suicide attempt. And you're like, okay, great. Where's my gloves? Fuck, I don't have any. Okay, awesome. Right. Let's wait until we can get some gloves and let's get hands on. So yeah, I really enjoy that you've kind of been able to take it and really make it specific about first responders because it is totally different. It's not the sterile environment of the hospital where everything is readily available and there's crash carts and everything is already stocked and ready to go. It's you're coming in with whatever you got on you. And again, as like if from the law enforcement side of things, until the paramedics get there and you're like, God, please hurry up because you have way more things than we do and we really need you. So please come fast. Like, yeah. And so then you, from your master's, you went on and also then did your PhD, and the PhD is in depth psychology. So not death, like I thought, but depth as in deep mind psychology. Yes.
Like your subconscious, the unconscious. Yeah. So go deep. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And so what did you find? Did you find that some of that matched up with what you'd studied in your master's, or was it something different, or how did that kind of play out?
It just went into more of the psychology, and it really reinforced and elaborated on some of the subconscious processes that are happening on these calls. So a lot of times what makes death identification so difficult is that historically we've never been taught how to do them. We've never been taught how to do them. Our teachers weren't taught how to do them. Their teachers weren't taught how to do them. Physicians and nurses, they're not taught how to do it. So it's really touching on a systemic issue. So if anybody's listening here that goes, oh gosh, I've done a few bad ones, forgive yourself for it. It's not your fault. You were raised by a system that failed to prepare you for it because they failed to recognize that this was an important part of the job as well. And I think that's kind of come as an evolutionary point as well, because in the past, at least when I first started working, we would, load and go with every workable cardiac arrest. If they weren't dead right there, we were getting our first round and getting going within the first few minutes. And then there was really no interaction with the family. There was very little interaction with the family. In fact, I kind of learned to avoid them. And so we would hand them off to the hospital. And then it was the hospital's job. And I thought, well, they know how to do this, right? And then I later found out, no, they don't actually know how to do this. So I think a lot of the habits and the culture that we've built has been circled around avoidance. I think that a lot of our behavior and the way that we have handled death notifications have been rooted in avoidance, which has led to more poor interactions than anything else.
Yeah, it's called rookie up. That's usually what it is. Rookie up. Yeah. You go tell the family. I know I got rookied up for my first death notification, call an inmate's family and tell them that their loved one died in jail. I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I was like, hi, this is Nikki Thompson calling from the Edmonton Remand Center. I'm looking for, Mrs. So-and-so. Oh, hi. Yes. Your daughter. Yes. Unfortunately, she has passed away. And then the onslaught of how, when, why, what happened? How come you didn't save her? What, blah, blah. And I was just like, we really tried hard. Like, I'm so sorry. Like, and then I'm, it was awful. It was the worst. It was the worst thing ever. And totally not trained. Like, I had never even been told, like, at least give me a fucking script that I can follow. Like, that would have been better than me just fucking winging it. Like,
I'll give you one. That wasn't terrible. Terrible. No training. And being a rookie, that wasn't terrible. There was a better way they could have prepared you for it, which is now in your case, you have to call because obviously we're dealing with inmates. Ideally, if we can, but yours is a perfect example of when we can't and we have to do it over the phone. But ideally, all notifications should take place in person, in time, and in pairs. Okay? Your next best is going to be the phone, sometimes because of distance. Maybe the news got a hold of the incident, so you don't want the family finding out on social media, that kind of stuff. Or in the case of COVID, where a lot of notifications took place on the phone because caution and social distancing measures, right? So in this case, you would have called, you'd ask for the next of kin, you'd identify that you had the right person on the phone, you'd identify yourself, and then you would say, I'm calling with some bad news. So you fire off this warning that I'm coming with bad news. And then you say who it's about. It's about so-and-so. So it's very clear that you're calling about their loved one. You're calling with bad news. And it gives them this moment to brace themselves and consent. It gives them a moment to consent for the conversation they're about to take place and have. And then you tell them details. So maybe as we're not 100% sure what's, maybe they were found unresponsive in their cell, and we immediately began to assess them and noticed they didn't have a pulse and they weren't breathing. We initiated resuscitation measures or maybe you would probably say that we initially started CPR. We called 911. We got all this, stuff going, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Very brief, right? You keep it like less than 30 seconds. And then you'd say, but unfortunately, despite our best efforts, none of our interventions work and that your so-and-so has died. And you have to use the word dead and died. And so in that case, you have now delivered a very clear, concise, and compassionate death notification. Of course, you can be very mindful about your tone and, the passion behind, your tone, but that's really the only way you want to try and soften that message is with your voice, but not with the words. The words have to be dead and died. Otherwise, that leaves room for ambiguity. That leaves room for their denial to seep in and go, well, look, or they're not really sure exactly what you mean by they're no longer with us or even passed away can be very confusing to somebody whose fight or flight has been activated and their stress hormones are taking the lead.
Wow. That is I am speechless because there's so many things that you touched on that explain what you did so they know that you actually tried. Not like, oh, we tried to revive them, but we couldn't. But we did this and we did this and we did this. And unfortunately, the end result was we were not successful. We did try, but we were not successful. Because I think that's the other part of it too, is having been on the other side of that, having gotten the shitty news from people, somebody that you love has passed away. And your mind is it's processing everything at fucking lightning speed, but at the same time in so total slow motion that you're they did what? What happened? This is like, did they do CPR? Like what, right? But at the same time, you're like, oh my God, okay, so-and-so's dead. And like, brrr, what did they do? So like to be able to give like tangible actions that were taken so they can understand, like you said, there's no ambiguity on, yeah, we tried to revive them. What the fuck does that mean? Right? No, we gave them CPR. We called 911. We, like we did these things. And then I find it very, very interesting on the word dead and death, because that counterintuitively would soften it with passed away, has passed away, is no longer with us, is, like there's so many different ways to say it without saying dead or like died. And so very interesting. So to make sure that those words are used, because then the person, and so what does it do on the flip side for the person? Like, I know you kind of spoke about there's no ambiguity and there's no ability for them to kind of have like that, like bargaining moment of like, oh, but maybe like, is it that, or is it just also that there's like the finality of like, they can't, it's easier to comprehend because it's final? Is that kind of the way it is?
It's the easiest for them to comprehend. And this is where the depth psychology kind of comes in and the way the subconscious works. So our subconscious mind processes things in the positive. And it's not to say that if you say they did not survive, it's not to say that they won't understand that eventually, but it takes just a second longer. And in that second, there is so much agony in trying to seek out the truth. And the thing is, you want to build rapport and you want to build trust through communication with the recipient of this message. And you build it by offering them dignity, clarity, respect, and, honesty. And that honesty sometimes is very, very hard. So you don't soften the blow with the words, you soften it with maybe your tone of voice and inflection. And so what you want to make sure to do is remember that when we say, I'm so sorry, Travis did not survive, the mind is going to hear survive first. Not, the word not is a negation word. Negation in language, when you take that word out, it changes the whole meaning of the sentence. So I'm sorry, Travis did not survive turns into I'm sorry, Travis survived. That's what they hear. And it's confusing. And so it'll still get there. The way I describe it is that it's kind of like your train of thought taking the highway versus the side street. It'll still get there. It's just going to get there a lot slower. And so it has to hear it backwards before it hears it, or it has to hear it in the positive before it hears the not part. So the best way I describe this is if you have a patient. So if you have a kid and you want them to stop jumping on the couch and you say, stop jumping on the couch, they're going to hear jumping on the couch before they hear the stop. Mm-hmm. If you have a patient and you're starting an IV and you go to start the IV and you say, don't move, they're going to hear move before they hear don't. So you want to say in the positive, I need you to sit on this couch. I need you to hold still while I start this IV. So say things in the positive. So that's why you have to say, I'm so sorry to tell you Travis has died.
Yes. I love that you say that too, because I remember distinctly, I was like a young CO and I went on a knife defense course, and that was the main thing that stuck in my head. You never say don't move or don't do this, because they hear move, they hear go, they hear like they don't hear the don't. And so I was like, what? And then I started like going back through scenarios and I was like, oh, 100% that's exactly what happens when you're trying to get an inmate to not move. When you're like, don't move, they're like, like yeah, exactly. Yes. Like, yeah. So that, okay. Yes. Now I can see like that again, a little bit of that deeper psychology side of things. Okay. And so then what do we do if, like, when the questions come? Because that for me, again, as like the rookie on the phone, and again, like not really knowing the scenario, was just kind of like there and was like the extra hands that had showed up at the right time when like the shit was hitting the fan. And it was like, all these things need to be done. You're doing this. And like, oh, I got the fucking short end of the stick. I'm calling the family. Great. So what do we do? And let's go best case scenario. We do know what the fuck happened. We were the medic on site. We know exactly what happened. What do we do with those questions? And what do we do with the family that is just absolutely falling apart? Like what role should we be taking in that?
So 2 different parts. With the questions, you answer them as best as you can, as honestly as possible to your best ability. And when you don't know the answer, it's perfectly fine to tell them that.
Okay.
Don't fill the space. Don't give them an answer just to give them an answer. It's no different than being a teacher or in an educator role, working with a student and not knowing the answer to a question that you should know the answer to, or that you would hope that you'd know the answer to. It's okay to say, I don't have that information right now. It's so much better than lying to them or giving them a roundabout answer. The next thing is, when it comes to them falling apart, you have to just let them. That's the hardest thing for people to do, especially in the position as a first responder, because we're quite literally conditioned to hear a bell, respond with lights and sirens, and either fix their problem or transport them somewhere to someone who can fix it at, say, the hospital, right? And the hardest thing to do is hold space for them to have their emotional response to that loss. And holding space is just simply standing by and allowing it to happen and not letting your discomfort crowd the room and change that experience for them. So there's no need to stop them. There's no need to pacify them. There's no need to comfort them so that it stops. You can comfort them and be there and available when they need it, but there's no need to ensure that that comfort creates any sort of relief for them. There's no reason, because you have to remember that emotions, while uncomfortable, are fleeting. They never last forever. So let them fall apart. Wait patiently. It's going to be uncomfortable. Don't let your discomfort crowd up any space in that room. Let them have their experience, and they will really appreciate that, whether they realize it or not. It might only occur on a subconscious level, but people will remember somebody trying to stop them, like abruptly stop their crying, right? You just need to let them have it. And it makes you feel so helpless. But trust me, the best thing you can do for those people and the best way you can support them is give them the space to grieve, even when it makes you uncomfortable.
Yeah, I had seen, I don't know where I saw it. It was probably on a forum or something that I'd been on, but it said, as paramedics, mostly it was kind of geared towards paramedics, sometimes law enforcement, but you're there on that family's worst day ever. And you can either make or break that day. So you can either leave them with a lasting, horrible remembrance of that day on top of the horror of losing the person that they love, or you can leave them with that sense of not peace, but and closure is not really the right word. I can't remember how they worded it in this message or whatever, but that you with dignity and with compassion, and that even though you were giving somebody the worst news they've ever wanted to hear, that they still thanked them at the end of the interaction. Thank you for what you do, and thank you for coming, and thank you for trying, right? And that, to me, I was like, oh my God, I didn't ever think of it like that you could make it better. You could make it better by how you notify them, by how you let them fall apart or process or whatever it is that you're doing. And so I think that yeah, just to hold that space for them. And again, be very uncomfortable while it's happening, because nobody, and like you said, I think the other side of first responders is we want to help. That's our innate nature, is to be empathetic and compassionate and to help. That's why we go into these careers 99% of the time. And so when somebody's falling apart, our first instinct is, like you said, to help, to fix it, to figure out a way to make it stop so that they're not hurting anymore. But that's not our role.
Grief does not need to be fixed. It needs to be experienced. And one of the things that's also really challenging for first responders is to just lean into the silence. And this is where I always tell people that our introverts out there this is their superpower, because they're perfectly fine shutting up. It's us extroverts that have the challenge, always needing to open our mouths and fill the space. And, it's okay. It's okay. There's power in silence, and your presence is so comforting, because you, is this point of authority, whether you're law enforcement or fire department or EMS. Anybody coming to help when somebody finds their family member dead is a welcomed sight. So just know that you just being there is enough to provide comfort.
Love that. Love that. Okay. So then the next side of things is, as the first responder, when I've had to give that death notification, when I have been that first person who's been on scene and it has been a horrific death, a horrific car accident, or, a suicide is always awful. How do I not take that with me? How do I not carry that then with me and internalize that? Even if, again, or maybe I gave a shitty death notification, like I really did. And you'd said earlier, like, forgive yourselves, but knowing that like I fucked that up pretty bad and I did not leave that person with a good lasting impression of, you know, the last day of this person's life. So how do we not carry that with us?
Well, I'll tell you this, you could give a death notification perfectly and still walk away feeling like shit afterwards. That's just the nature of this. You're not going to walk away knowing the positive impact you had on those survivors, on those family members. Because I'll tell you right now that the people who showed up when our mom died this was over 20 years ago, but they probably walked away from that interaction feeling horrible, feeling helpless. Like, oh, I wish I could have helped these two young girls, process their mother's death. I mean, we were inconsolable. The whole family was, there's this whole thing. And I'm sure they walked away wishing they could have done more. And yet, look what I've done with that experience.
Yeah.
Like if they see me now, and they left me with such a positive experience on the worst possible day of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And they still made it better. And they didn't even know, they probably had no clue. So just know you're going to walk away feeling horrible. It's not yours to carry. Their grief is not yours to carry. And I think that's a big piece that's missing from the discussion of empathy and compassionate care is we talk about like, you need to be empathetic with your patients and all that. Yeah. And we have to recognize that empathy is there for us to feel this, to feel something that connects us with this person, to help us empathize with them. And then it's to let it go. It's to get off that call, go home and discharge that emotion because it's not yours to carry. And nobody teaches us that part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's so important. It's so important if you want to have any sort of sustainability in this career.
I think that I've never heard it said that way. And I think that that's probably one of the best ways I've heard it described is empathy is that connection. It's our ability to connect with that person, but then it's to be let go. It's like, it's not to be continued empathy. It's empathize the situation, the scenario, the connection is there. Now the connection is no longer needed. And now we let it go.
Yes. In that moment, exactly. It served its purpose, but their grief and their loss is not yours to carry. And that's where that's where this cumulative trauma, like experiencing and witnessing other people's trauma, that adds up and it's not even ours. Mm-hmm. It's not even. And then instead, what do? We create this armor where we, block ourselves from feeling anything from the other person. That's not a solution either. That comes with its as well.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And that's usually what we see is, and then, yeah, when you're giving a death notification like a robot, because you don't want to feel that empathy because then you take it home and yep, for sure. Oh, absolutely. So yeah, totally. And so this is just one, because I do want to get into the amazing work you do with your business. This is just one of the phenomenal courses that you offer as professional development or continuing education for first responders. So what else has emergency resilience like created? What other things do you have to offer us? Can we in Canada, can we take it or do we have to be in the States?
I have a lot of Canadian friends. I have a lot of Canadian people that take my courses. So it is CAPC accredited. So you have to double check and make sure that which CAPC is recognized in Canada. So just make sure the areas that you work in and are licensed in accepts it. But currently, so most of my courses are in person and I am slowly but surely getting them all online. So we have my death notification course. We have a course on the Lazarus phenomenon, which is where, patients have been, it's a very rare thing. Okay. So I really get into these really rare atypical things. And I always try and start my courses by saying, this is not meant to sensationalize or, teach from a position of fear, but just, again, curiosity and just being aware of when it happens, which Lazarus phenomenon is when somebody is, a resuscitation attempt is made, termination is, established and you terminate efforts. And then all of a sudden they regain pulses all by themselves. And many have, it's called auto resuscitation is another word for it, more scientific term for it. And some of these people have walked out of the hospital neurologically intact. And it's just this very bizarre medical phenomenon. The other one is CPR-induced consciousness. So where you do CPR so well that the patient wakes up, perfuse their brain well enough. Yeah, this happens mostly with witnessed arrests. Yes, but it can happen with witnessed arrests, and it's growing in occurrence because our progression in CPR has made so many improvements in the last few years. And so that's another one. And then the one that's coming out, two more that are coming out, one of them being a ketamine therapy. So ketamine assisted psychotherapy is a big topic. That's actually what I wrote my dissertation on in my PhD program. And then I've also used it personally with great results. Just have another series on different, mental health type stuff. So that one will be coming out shortly after that. And then, I've got different topics on generational trauma, family presence during CPR, a bunch of other things that will eventually make their way onto the platform as well.
Very cool. I want to dive into the ketamine thing because Nicole and I, so for our listeners, if you did not catch Nicole Ferry's episode in season 8, she had just come back from a ketamine retreat that was helping with her PTSD and her mental health. And so I had literally never heard of this until we met and started talking. And I was like, I'm sorry, did you say ketamine? Like as in the drug, like as in the horse tranquilizer? Like is that as what? And she was like, yes. So tell me all about this because I want to know what the fuck is this?
Right. So ketamine is technically a hallucinogen. It's not a psychedelic, but what we have found through research, this has all been legitimized. This is not some underground thing where you have to, sneak around and find someone who will offer it. You can find a clinic, a ketamine practice, and go get a prescription from a physician or a nurse practitioner, and you work with a therapist on getting the, ketamine infusion. And then essentially what we found is that it behaves like a psychedelic. So it gives us access to the subconscious, in a waking state. And then the emotions and the experiences and the feelings and the memories that come up during that journey, during that 1 hour is about how long it takes of experiencing that. We call it a journey or a trip or whatever. And then you take that information, that stuff that came up from your subconscious, and you take it to your therapist and you go process it. And you process it and you integrate it and you go, okay, what is this? So for example, one of my first ketamine experiences that I had personally was all this grief. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, is everybody else. And I mean, I'm just crying and just letting it all out. And at the end of it and through therapy, I realized none of that was to carry. None of that was mine. That was me releasing it. And so start to recognize when I'm picking up stuff that's not mine in the first place and how much of other people's losses and griefs that I was carrying with me that I had no business doing. It wasn't serving them in any way for me to carry it that many years later. And people I didn't know, certain patients came up and that stuff just needed to be released. And that's what I got to work on in therapy. And so different things come up for different people. You never know what's going to come up. Sometimes it's immense joy and laughter. That all this stuff coming out. And then, another time realizing, oh my gosh, how much do I, deprive myself of joy because I don't feel safe feeling joy? Where in my childhood did that program get downloaded? And how do I rewire that? And so ketamine offers this opportunity to rewire subconscious programming that many times was embedded into us either over time or at a very young age. And to do so in a waking state, it's very powerful because even though you're only in the ketamine journey and in this like kind of altered state for about an hour, the medicine works for about 3 days. And so you have this opportunity to rewire self-limiting beliefs, to rewire associations, to really forgive yourself for that, maybe give yourself a little grace, that version of you that didn't know how to give a death notification and like forgive yourself and let that one go. Like that, it gives you kind of impressionable opportunity on your psyche.
That is so interesting because again, she's like, yeah, ketamine. I was like, I'm sorry, how is this helping? But to feel the things you need to feel because your brain can now literally just be wide open and let it all out rather than both sides of the brain fighting against each other. Yes, we're going to think about this. No, we're not. Yes, no, we're not. Right. Like it's just going to come out. And then to take that knowledge and then actually process it again afterwards, after you physically process it. Now we're going to go through and we'll be like, oh, and like, I like how you said, like, oh, so now I recognize when I'm holding on to shit that is not mine. Now I'm like, oh, Hey, nope, let
Yeah,
that go.
exactly. And it helps you kind of create new patterns going forward.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so for somebody that was interested in that, like how did they, so they can sign up for your course, obviously, which hello people, get on this.
That,
But
by the way, so a little plug. It's not out yet, but it's going to be free. I want this information out there. It's one of those things that, it's either too controversial or because of, I don't know if you know what happened to the whole Matthew Perry thing. So everybody's like up in arms about it. And then there's also just this lack of awareness and ignorance to it. So people aren't interested in putting it on the agenda at conferences. So it is going to be an absolutely free course. And it's not available yet, but it is in production. So I've already filmed it and it's being edited right now. So at least in the next few weeks, it should be accredited and up and available.
I love that. So for our listeners, all of the information is going to be in the show notes. So I will be linking to these courses. I'll be linking to Alex's contact information and things like that. So you guys can check her out and touch base with her and learn more about all of the freaking amazing work that you're doing for our first responder community. And just again, trailblazing, which I fucking love. I love to see women trailblaze, like fucking bust it down, baby. Let's go. So amazing. Amazing. Okay, well, I want to wrap us up with a couple of my favorite rapid fire questions because I just fucking love them because you never know what people are going to say. And the number one question I ask all of my guests, and this will take you back to your time on the ambulance. What was your favorite food or snack when you were on shift?
Sour Patch Kids.
Yes, it's okay. So I need to start keeping like a tally of like the things that people pick because Sour Patch Kids is like right up there. Like it's right either Sour Patch Kids or Sour Soothers, like right at the very top.
Yeah, it's up there. And then there was chocolate M&M or peanut M&Ms. That's what.
Yes. Yep. I'm a peanut M&Mer. Yep, love it. I think it's because again, it's small, it's fast, it's sugary, it keeps you going. You can eat a couple of them without feeling gross. If you eat the whole bag, sometimes you feel a little gross, but then if you only get the small bag, you don't feel so bad. So, yep. Okay. I love it. Next one would be what is the like coolest location or place that you've ever been to on a call?
Oh gosh, that one's a hard one. Let me think. This isn't, no, I don't know. That one's gonna be a hard one for me to think of. Some examples people have given you? How many people have answered with this?
There's been a couple. So a couple like RCMP where they were like up in the Yukon. And so they responded to like a very remote location. I have had military friends that were talking about their time in Germany. One of them went to Spain. So things like that. But like just kind of, like a place where you just kind of, you remember it because it was like, holy shit, either this is crazy, we're on the side of a building, or this is crazy, we're in a very remote location, those types of answers.
I do remember, and I absolutely hated being on the highways and freeways. You could not get me to stay on those traffic collisions any longer than I needed to. But there were a couple of occasions where the entire freeway was shut down. And so it was very safe for us to be out there. And I just remember like looking at the gravel and looking at the lanes and looking at like, it just going, how many people actually get to see this? Because you're not supposed to be on roads. And I just remember in my mind, like, I'm walking on this freeway that people are normally going 75 miles an hour. And I'm going to go cook dinner in a minute because I'm almost off shift. But it was just this like weird thing. Like I'm standing in the middle of the freeway where it's completely safe to be, but most of the times it wasn't. You were just on the shoulder and people are just blazing by you. And I just wanted to get off as soon as possible.
Yes, I can definitely relate to that. Being like in a location where you're just like, I'm the only person that has ever been here doing this right now.
Yeah, it's super enough on the front right now.
Yeah, totally. Well, and I never, I do think about it, when you're passing emergency services or even like the tow trucks and stuff like that, like slow down, people, don't be fucking dicks, don't go ripping past those people. But the danger that first responders put themselves in those situations when they're trying to get to the person, get them going, get them into the ambulance, get them, and yeah, people are fucking ripping by because like they've been inconvenienced for 5 minutes and you're just like, this person is literally having the worst day of their life. I think you can take 5 fucking seconds and slow down so I can get them in the ambulance and get going. Like, please and thank you, people. So yes, I can see that. Okay, and then the last one I have is, and you've given some good ones, but what would you say is a piece of advice that you would give to somebody that's looking to get into, say, a medic career?
Well, I already said to document all injuries.
Mm-hmm.
How small you think it is maybe a big deal later. I would say work with a therapist before you need it. Okay. The fact that you chose this career in the first place is a good indicator that you might benefit from one. Okay. There's quite possibly a good, strong link between childhood trauma and getting into these industries. And I think that, that would be, I would say, just have a backup plan, whether it be education, getting your higher education in a adjacent field, or so for me, I went into mental health psychology because I still wanted to serve my field. I wanted to be, EMS adjacent, if you will. And I saw the writing on the wall even as it was happening. And I thought, if I can't get back on an ambulance, like I still want to be of service to this community. And I am so, so grateful that I've been able to find it in education. But find a way to back up your plan, because the job will physically, emotionally, and spiritually drain you. And there's going to be times that you need to explore plan B.
Yes, I think that's a phenomenal piece of advice. Lots of people say, get that therapist in place before, but I do like that, have a plan B, because and the thing is, you never know when an injury is going to sideline you. You never know when, and that could be a mental injury, a physical injury. Like it could be something that happens not at work. Like you're fucking out and about and you get into a car crash. Like if you don't have a plan B and you can't physically go back to that job, what the fuck are you doing with your life? Because a lot of us pour our whole soul and being into that identity of that first responder. And then we have nothing on the outside. And then when we're hit with, oh, hey, you can never go back to that career, that's no longer physically feasible or mentally feasible, or whatever it is, then you go through that identity crisis of like, oh my God, who am I? Whereas if you have that backup plan and you already have something that you're interested in, or that it's something, again, staying curious, that you maybe want to delve a little bit deeper into, it's not so scary when somebody says, oh, hey, this is not your journey anymore. You're going to need to find a new one, for you to go, oh, well, actually, I was kind of interested in this. Maybe I'll dive down this little pathway and see where it goes. So yeah, I think that's a phenomenal piece of advice. Well, like I said, girl, this has been I've learned so much. Again, wish I had known you 20 years ago. That would have been fucking helpful. But no, so good. And I know that our listeners will love this. And I hope for all of our, law enforcement, medic, firefighter listeners out there that do have to give death notifications, take those points and maybe rehearse how you would say it, and maybe go over how you've said it in the past and how you could maybe have made it better. Again, don't ruminate on it, don't shit on yourself, but just go over and is there a way you can change it so that the next one you give is better than the last one that you gave, which I think is the best way we can do it, just getting better every single time.
Yep, you can only move forward. There's no point. Anybody here, I've given plenty of horrible ones as well. So I don't come from a position of I went to school for it, so now I know better. No, I went to the school of life where I just said a few things I shouldn't have. And then it just got reinforced by, some of the research and education that I did. And so it's just a matter of doing better when you know better.
Yes, I love that. Well, thank you again. Thank you for sharing your time. Thank you for sharing your energy. Any last words for our listeners?
No, I just really appreciate this conversation. So thank you for bringing it to your audience.
Well, that's it for today, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in, listening, giving me your time, your energy, and your attention. I completely appreciate it. Make sure you check out our next episode with another badass female first responder anywhere you get your favorite podcasts. And follow us on Instagram and Facebook at bluelinefitnesstesting.com. I hope you stay safe, keep your head on a swivel, and watch your six. Blue Line Fitness Testing is a premier law enforcement fitness testing and training center based in Edmonton. Specializing in helping individuals prepare for the physical demands of a career in law enforcement, we offer comprehensive fitness evaluations, specialized training programs, and classes tailored to meet the unique needs of our clients. Our facility hosts a range of classes and are committed to fostering a supportive and empowering environment where clients can achieve their fitness goals. Our team includes experienced trainers who bring specialized expertise in law enforcement, self-defense, personal training, and rehabilitation. We engage through our community through challenges, events, and our podcast, and we are dedicated to helping individuals succeed in their fitness journeys and career aspirations in law enforcement. Are you looking to get started with your career? Come see Blue Line Fitness Testing, and we'll get you there.